What's going on, everybody? Nick from the Sound Coop here. I got another little mix trick for all you studio cats today. This is my favorite way to shift the sonic content of a bass guitar into the sub-low region. You might run into certain situations where you need a bass guitar to mainly be supportive. And I usually find this situation occurs when you have a very dense mix. If you have a mix that has a lot of guitars or keyboards or both, this is very helpful. It's great for metal, it's great for pop. I use it a lot on reggae stuff. I would say anywhere where you need the bass to take a supporting role and not be so up front. Let's spin around to my Pro Tools and check it out. All right, real quick, I'm gonna let you guys hear the track so you guys got a feel for what we're working on. All right, pretty straightforward, a little bit of an R&B number. Let's pop over to the mix window and see what's going on here real quick. So I have two bass tracks. One of them's a DI, the other one's an amp. Let's listen to this DI track in solo just real quick. I have a little 2-bar section looped. Pretty straightforward, like a little 4 on the floor kind of a piece. Now let's take a listen to the amp track. To me, that basically sounds like sort of a mid-scooped version of the DI track. And, it kind of sounds a little more ampy, a little more even, a little more compressed, and some nice low-end punch. Now let's listen to both of these mixed together really quick. To me, it sounds like both of those signals are combined. It sort of takes the character from both of them and adds it into one. I could mix this signal as is, but for this track, I wanted to use this trick that I'm about to show you guys to sort of shift the audio content of this down into the subs more. Now, two key components to this trick. This bass amp is not actually a recorded bass amp. It's actually just the DI being routed into a Guitar Rig 5. And then I'm using the Bass Pro amp simulator. So the amp sound that you heard was basically just coming off of this. The great thing about this trick is you can basically use any sort of a bass guitar amp simulator in order to make this happen. It doesn't have to be Guitar Rig, but I definitely recommend using some sort of an amp model that's set up for a bass and not set up for a guitar. So the first part of this is just dialing yourself in a bass amp tone that you like, that seems to work. And then the second part of this involves a polarity reverse. Now, this might seem ridiculously straightforward. Typically, when you're messing around with the polarity reverse, what you're doing is you're taking two signals, like let's just say a top and a bottom snare, and you're flipping the polarity on one of them to make sure that they're matched. And usually the easy way to tell they're matched is one way or another is going to sound better. They're either going to sound better the way they are, or they're going to sound better with one of them having the polarity inverted. So this often gets done a lot with bass guitars, where you have a bass amp and a bass DI. You'll check the polarity. This is essentially just a polarity check, except the one thing that you'll find almost instantly is neither of these actually sounds better than the other one. It's all just context dependent. Now, the reason why it sounds awesome with the polarity either way is because the guitar amp software is basically adjusting your phase for you ahead of time. So let's just say you're virtually moving the microphone that's on your bass amplifier further away from the cab or closer to the cab inside of the software. As you're adjusting this, it's actually changing the phase to line everything back up. So despite how you have the Guitar Rig software set, the phase is going to be consistent. So when you flip the polarity on this, you don't have one signal that sounds bad and you have one signal that sounds better. What you end up with is, if the polarities are the same, you basically have the signals combining. If you invert the polarity on the cab, it shifts all the frequencies down into the sub-lows. So let's just take a listen to this really quick. I'm using a trim plugin to basically invert the polarity. So the polarity's inverted on this trim plugin. When I have the trim plugin off, the polarities are normal. When I turn this thing on, they get flipped. So let's just start off listening to the bass in solo. And this is going to be normal polarity. I'm going to play it for 2 bars, and then I'm going to flip the polarity, and we're going to listen for 2 bars. Here we go. It made a pretty big difference. Let's just listen to it one more time. Listen to how what is a normal bass guitar all of a sudden just shifts down into the subregion. You almost kind of lose the fundamental note just a little bit, but you get all this extra weight out of it. So this is really cool. I find this extremely helpful. I discovered this like probably 15 years ago when I was working on a reggae mix, and I had a very dense mix. And I actually found this out not using a Guitar Rig plugin. I found this out with mixing a cab. And so it's one of those things that it can be done with a bass cab also. The one thing is you have to have a little bit of engineering know-how as to how to mic up the cab. Or if you're just a mix engineer and you weren't there during the recording session and you didn't mic the cab, you have to have a little bit of know-how as to how to manipulate the actual recorded amp track in order to sort of get this sort of a result. But for me, this works every single time I've used any sort of an amp sim software as a substitute for a real amp. And all it does is it just shifts those lows for you. It kind of gets the bass guitar out of the way. It won't compete with a guitar signal as much. Really great for metal. I used to use this a lot when I was mixing metal. If you have really chunky, heavy guitars and you want the bass guitar to get out of their way, this technique works great. So anyway, I hope you guys like this. If you found this interesting, please do shoot me a like and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. And I'll be coming at you again with another one of these really soon. Take care. Bye.